Now we're looking at examples of faith, and we've been focused on examples. In fact, this is the last one from the Gospels. We will not meet next week because we're having the picnic. And remember, worship is at 11, which I looked at was the same as last year. Last year we had it at 11. So 11. So 11. So anyway, but don't come here because you'll be by yourself. Anyway, so we've been looking at, and who are some of the people we've looked at in the Gospels as faith examples?
Zacchaeus.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Zacchaeus.
We looked at Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus last week, and what was the deal with Zacchaeus?
He was a tax collector.
He was a tax collector.
And he was short.
And he was short. Shelley, you said that with a big smile on your face.
Well, somebody has to be short with me. I am. Yes, you are.
So if we see y'all climbing a tree, we know somebody important is coming. And how does Zacchaeus show faith, demonstrate faith?
He wanted to be able to see Jesus, which, he wasn't satisfied with just being down in the crowd. He wanted to see him, so he climbed up in a sycamore tree.
Okay.
With the Lord he wanted to see.
Yes, so he did that. So he did something as a demonstration of faith. And he did something else, too, that was just as dramatic.
Took him to his house.
Took him to his house.
For a meal.
For a meal.
Back 4 times.
Yeah, and said he would pay back 4 times money that he had gotten
The extra.
illegally.
Yeah.
And so he was, so he demonstrated faith in very practical ways. Who else did we talk about?
Deborah.
Well, we talked about Deborah back in the Old Testament, the great judge whom God used to free his people. And she did what God had called her to do, even though she wasn't at the center of the story. What else in the New Testament? We looked at 2 other people.
It was Amos.
Well, we looked at Amos, and again, the prophet, the great prophet, the shepherd who ends up confronting the king.
Simon Peter.
We looked at Simon Peter, and what was the deal with Simon?
He denied Jesus 3 times.
Yeah, he remember that was that interesting kind of story when you look at it. Because Simon Peter was the one who said,
I'll die for you.
I will die for you, right? And he said that after he said, you are the Messiah. You are the Son of God. My gosh. He makes this dramatic, confession. And then, I'm going to be betrayed. No, you're not. I'll stand out with you. I'll fight for you. I'll die with you. And then he ends up running. He runs away. And he denies that he even knows.
Before the rooster crows.
Yeah. Now, that would sure appear as though Simon Peter has blown it, right? But showing a lack of trust, right? A lack of faith. But what ends up happening at the end of because that's not the end of the Simon Peter story, right?
No, he follows Jesus.
He ends up, Jesus gives him a job to do.
Yeah.
So even though he shows a lack of faith at one point, he's still restored and still has something that he can do. And we looked at the centurion, right? Remember?
Yeah.
And the centurion, what was the thing with the centurion?
His child was sick.
Yeah, that's right. Well, his servant was sick, and he wanted Jesus to heal.
His daughter.
Oh, yes.
And he said, you don't even.
But he didn't even need to go to the house. He trusted so much that he kind of compared Jesus' authority to his own, the authority he had over his men, that if Jesus wanted to do it, he could do it.
Don't you think that would be a conflict for him? He believed that much, and yet he had to follow the Roman thing where, you don't declare stuff like that because he was Roman.
Yeah.
And Jesus was a Jew.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. What...
He must have kept it quiet.
Well, what's interesting, if you look at the time period, would be a whole lot easier for a Roman to follow Judaism than for a Jew to follow Roman religion. In fact, it would be harder for the Jews to accept a Gentile than it would be for the Romans to accept a fellow Roman being Jewish. One of the things that's interesting about the Romans is they accepted all religions. They were open to all religions. In fact, in the middle of Rome, the temple, the big temple, and it's still there now, is called the Pantheon. Pantheon. And do you know what the word Pantheon means? Pan means all. That's Greek word for all. Theon or theos is the word for brother. Adelphos is brother, but theos is God.
Oh.
So the Pantheon, by its very name, is the temple for what?
All gods.
All gods. For all gods. And that's what you had in the Pantheon. They had altars for as many gods as they could find, sitting in the middle of the city of Rome. Rome did not care who you worshipped as long as you did what? Paid your taxes. And participated in Roman, as a Roman citizen. Roman patriotic events. And that's what got Christians into trouble. Because Christians, part of what Romans did to show their loyalty to the state, to the Roman Empire, is you would sacrifice to a bunch of gods, all kinds of gods, and then you'd gather and eat it, as a whole community. And that showed that Romans were interested in everybody. And you also sacrificed to the emperor, who they sometimes believed was a god, sometimes didn't. But that's part of being a good Roman. That's what you did. And a lot of Christians said, I can't do that. I can't do that. And Romans, a lot of times we miss the fact that Christians were persecuted not because of their religion. Romans could care less who you worshiped. They just didn't care. You worship anybody. You worship nothing. You're okay as long as you do what? Pay your taxes and not cause trouble. Romans persecuted Christians because they weren't patriotic. They weren't good Romans. That's what they believed. The Christians were not good Roman citizens. They didn't participate in what Roman citizens needed to be. It would be comparable to like saluting the flag. If a group, and Jehovah's Witnesses during World War II got into major trouble, were arrested, put into jail, because they wouldn't say the Pledge of Allegiance. Because the Jehovah's Witness won't pledge any allegiance to anything but Jehovah, but God. And so they wouldn't say the Pledge of Allegiance, and they were arrested.
And what time was that?
World War II.
World War II.
Yeah.
Is that in this country or?
Oh yeah, in this country. They were arrested. In fact, I can't think of the name. There's a landmark case where the Supreme Court ruled that because they were arrested. And one of the cases went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that the state couldn't do that. That was imposing, religion on. They were not respecting the religious beliefs of the Jehovah's Witnesses. But yeah, it was against the law. Interesting things, World War II. It was interesting times. Early on, how, and you can still see pictures of it, how kids in classrooms, when they said and that's when saying the pledge became a big deal. It wasn't a huge deal, not in schools before World War II. But how the kids, what they were told to do as they said the pledge, looking at the flag.
Put your hand up here.
This is World War II.
Oh. I know.
You extended your arm with your
okay.
palm up. Now, who extended their arm with the palm down?
Hitler.
The Nazis did.
Yeah.
And that you see pictures of kids saluting the flag like that. They changed. They decided that wasn't a good look. Maybe hand over the heart was better than saluting the flag with a straight arm. So yeah, a lot of things, interesting things went on in our history. Anyway, yeah, a little history thing. Anyway, today we're going to look at Mary, right? And there's a little story, at the beginning, story about motherhood, and there was I didn't see anything really different in that. Just that mothers do what?
Take care of them.
take care of the kids, right? Love the kids, and as kids change, mothers'
Role changes.
roles change, but mothers,
Are the same.
the love doesn't. The love is still there, but the roles they play change. And everybody, anybody who's had kids know that.
Yeah.
You just change. Or if you don't, you lose your kids sometimes. So, and I think that was presented because we're looking at Mary as the mother of Jesus, and they in the lesson they offer some scripture passages, really 3, that involve Mary's relationship with her son Jesus, and so let's look at those 3. And again, Mary as an example of a person who has faith that is required, I think, to sort of change as her relationship with Jesus and time progresses. The first one is right at the beginning from the Gospel of Luke 15 through 19. When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that had happened, which the Lord has told us about." Now, we're kind of jumping in the middle of a story, right? Because there seems to be a lot of things that happened that aren't included here. What are some of the things that had happened? In other words, to what are the shepherds referring when they say, let's go to bed and see this thing that has happened? What's this
The
thing?
star they follow.
Okay, well, that was the Magi. What with the shepherds?
See the baby
Oh,
Jesus.
okay.
It was the heavenly host, in the
Yeah.
field watching their flocks by night, and so announcing the birth of Jesus, right? Now so this is what has happened. They hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in a manger. Now, from Mary's perspective, when this is occurring and the shepherds are there, what does she know before
That
this?
she was going to have.
I mean, with everything that she knows in the story of Luke, because it's really, Luke is the one that deals with Mary, and the birth. We see it a little bit in Matthew, don't see it in John and Mark at all.
She knows at his birth he's going to be the Son of God.
Okay, she knows something. She knows he's going to be Son of God. How does she know he's going to be Son of God?
Angels.
Angel Gabriel told her, right? I'm a handmaiden of the Lord. Let it be done as you say. So she knows that this child that she's going to bear is going to be really, really special, right? Is going to be Son of God, right? Okay, so that she knows. When the shepherds arrive, what else does she know? So she knows that about the child. What else does she know?
That he's going to become, that he's God's son and he's going to become,
Well, that he's going to do certain
Yes.
things, right?
Yes.
And she knows that because when she was with her cousin Elizabeth, she let loose with a song that we call the Magnificat, where she talks about what not only Elizabeth's son's going to do, but what her son's going to do, right? And what is her son going to do? So she knows her son's going to be special. She also knows something about what he's going to do. And what is he going to do?
Who, Jesus?
Yeah, Jesus.
Oh, he's going to lead the people. He's going to
Okay.
bring God.
He's going to what?
Bring them to God.
Okay, he's going to bring them to God,
King of the Jews.
Okay, King of the Jews. What else is he going to do?
Do miracles.
Well, he is going to do miracles. Remember in the Magnificat, he says, and this is one of the things she says, he will pull the mighty from their thrones and lift up the lowly. Mm-hmm. So she knows that this is what he's going to do. So she knows who he is, right?
She probably knows there's going to be a little trouble too, doesn't she? If he's going to try to do all that.
Well, let's see that. That's a great point, because let's get back to that as we look at this story, because I think that's maybe alluded to in this story. So Mary knows this, right? And she also knows. Remember, this happened right after Mary delivered and put the baby that she had delivered in a manger. And a manger is
Feeding.
really clean and nice and very sentimental.
Very healthy.
Yeah, very healthy, yeah. Put it in a feeding trough. The baby, because
There's no room in the
there's
inn.
no room in the inn, because that's the only place you can do it. So Mary knows all this, going in. And here come these shepherds, right? And they found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. And when they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what they had been told about the child. And who had told the shepherds?
Angels.
About the angel, heavenly host. Okay. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. So what are the shepherds doing?
Showing them the way.
Okay, the shepherds are, according to what Luke is writing here, what are they doing? They see Mary, they see the child after the angel has told them this, and what are they doing? Telling folks, right?
Yes.
They're telling folks, right? And what is the attitude of the shepherds when they're telling folks? What does it sound like as Luke writes it? What impression do we have about how the shepherds are doing it?
Everyone was amazed at
Everyone was amazed, which means the shepherds must have been. How did they convey this news?
joyous.
Okay, probably joyous because people are amazed. I mean, they aren't saying, well, let me tell you this horrible story that happened. Because people wouldn't be amazed,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So they're amazed. So this is a story that they're conveying with energy and enthusiasm, right? Which is all this stuff that the angel had said. So they're very, very exciting. Now, it's really interesting when you think about these shepherds, because they were the first ones, right? And they saw angels, and they saw Mary, and they saw Joseph, and they saw Jesus in the manger, and they saw the little drummer boy playing. No, probably not. An angel and animals were talking, and all kinds of stuff. Probably not. But they see this, and they're excited, and they're sharing people. So we would expect later in the story the shepherds to be doing what?
Spreading the word.
Spreading the word, right? And what role do the shepherds play in the Gospel of Luke?
Messenger.
None.
That's why I couldn't remember.
The shepherds play no role after this.
Isn't that weird?
Never even mentioned. Never mentioned.
Back to being shepherds.
Right.
Back to their job.
Back to their job, and maybe the enthusiasm
Dissipated.
Wore off.
war dissipates a little bit, and you start thinking, well, all right, well, I've got a job to do. So, we'll just go with the
I did
flow.
what I needed to
So the enthusiasm, and it's not a shocker because Jesus, in the parable of the seeds being thrown, talks about seeds being thrown in shallow soil that grows up fast, but then when the sun comes, it wilts down. So it's, the shepherds, we don't want to say the shepherds, look at the shepherds and say, oh man, this was lifelong believers. Because they don't appear again in the story. But what does Mary, it's interesting. So the shepherds are flashing excited, right? But Luke writes that, but Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. So, given all that she knows, right? And all that how does she respond?
Mary.
How does Mary respond?
She's happy.
Okay, she's happy. Okay, what else in that response? Because it says Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. So she was happy because she treasured them.
Right.
What impression do we have? If we see the shepherds, and I think it's appropriate, because people are amazed by that story, and they told everybody, that they're out there and they're fired up. What about Mary?
She's accepting what God told her.
She's accepting what God told her. But we don't get the thing, well, and you know what Mary did? Mary told everybody in the neighborhood, and everybody Mary met. She told about this child and what was going on. No. She treasured what she was told and pondered it in her heart. Now, what does that say about Mary? especially given what she knows. And what does that show about her faith?
How strong it is.
Okay, her faith was, why do you say her faith was strong based on how she responded?
Because she listened to what they told her, she believed it, and she just kept quiet and continued carrying her baby. And
Now, Jerry, you said something that I said I wanted to go back to. You said what about Mary?
In trouble.
Yeah, well, Mary early on said, given what he's going to do. I mean, if his job
It's not gonna work.
If his job is going to pull the mighty from their thrones and lift up the lowly, you think that's going to make an easy life? You think the people that sit on thrones will say, okay,
I'll get off.
I'll get off. I'll get off and be lowly. So yeah, so the poor, the lowly guy can be lifted up. Yeah, that seems fair to me. That's probably not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
So maybe, as it says, she treasured but pondered. Maybe a part of her was aware that life for her child was not going to be an easy one or a popular one. And as we think about why might that be important for us as we consider our own faith?
What's the question?
Why might the example of Mary? I mean, if we talk about faith, in my background, it'd be more likely that we'd focus on the shepherds. You believe in Jesus, and what do? Man, you tell everybody, and you're excited, and everybody, they're out there and going, and that's what a faithful person does. But that's not what Mary did. How might her example actually maybe be a stronger example of what deep, solid faith, informed faith is all about?
Well, she isn't bragging.
Well, she doesn't
You know what I mean?
brag, so she's humble, which means if she's humble, that means... Because she could have put on the back of her donkey,
A banner.
a bumper sticker that says, "My son is the Messiah,"
Yeah.
right on the back. But she didn't do that. Well, maybe, I doubt that she did that. But so she was certainly humble, right? What else? That may inform us as we think about faith.
Well, do you think she knew how much Jesus would suffer towards the end? And if she did, her faith was very strong, of course, but still knowing how much he was going to suffer would just about tear her apart, don't you think?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because you sometimes, and maybe this is that parable of the seed sowed in the shallow soil. Sometimes a huge amount of enthusiasm, coming off the mountaintop. Life it's tough. For most of us, life is a mixed bag. I mean, I don't want to say life is, compared to people living in other places, we got pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's still a mixed bag. There's good and there's not so good. And that's what living is. And faith maybe isn't being excited all the time. But maybe faith is living with the disappointments and pain as well as the joys. I mean, I think what you said, Alan, was really good. That she treasured it, which meant she was happy about what she heard. So it's not like she's depressed. It's not postpartum depression. But she also pondered it. Like she didn't want to go out and start banging drums. Because she was aware.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that we can sort of think about. That strong faith is maybe the faith that enables us to endure, and not the one that everybody sees sort of on the outside. And certainly it did enable her to endure, because the second passage offered is from the Gospel of John, the second chapter. And one of the things, before I even read it, just to file away. As we talk about Jesus' mother in the 2nd chapter of John, understand in the Gospel of John, we don't have a birth story. So we don't have an angel appearing to Mary. We don't have Mary delivering Jesus in Bethlehem. We don't have shepherds coming. All of that's in Luke. We don't have kings showing up because that's in Matthew. We got none of that going on in John. And so I think we might be making a mistake if we read this and say, oh, well, but an angel spoke to Mary. Oh, well, she delivered him in a manger. Oh, well, kings came and brought gifts. I think we're making a mistake. We're missing what John is saying because none of that is in his gospel. If he wanted it in there, he'd have put it. So the Mary we're looking at here, I don't know that we can assume that she has all this incredible knowledge about Jesus, which may make her faith even greater. What she does in this story even greater. And this is the story. On the 3rd day, a wedding took place in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine. Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." Now, what is Jesus? What's happening here? They're at a wedding. The wine has run out, which means the party is coming to a close.
Yeah.
We're not going to have a party anymore. Once the bar closes, people are going to leave. So the wine is gone. When Mary says to Jesus, "They have no more wine," what seems to be conveyed in that statement?
It's showing that Mary thinks that he can make more wine. She has enough faith to believe that he can make wine.
Okay,
Out of water.
so they don't have any wine. That's not just I'll be darned, there's no wine. What's that?
It's not being prepared for it to last that long.
Yeah.
So it's ill-repaired with it.
Yeah, so it's kind of the suggestion that, okay, Jesus, I want you to do something about it.
Yeah.
There's no wine. Why don't you do something about
Do
it?
a miracle.
Yeah, based on how Jesus responds,
Yes.
why you,
It's not time.
which is one of the times that, good gracious, Jesus sounds just kind of like a teenager. Mom, why are you doing that? Why are you hassling me?
Yeah.
Which we've all heard
Time
at different
to do
places. Yeah, but I mean, that's what, only my hour hasn't come. What's he talking about? My hour hasn't come.
Just start.
Yeah, just start. And in John, the hour is a big deal. In John, what is Jesus' hour?
That was on the cross.
It's on the cross.
Died for all sinners.
That's the hour in John. When Jesus is lifted up on the cross, and he ain't there yet. His hour hasn't come. Yeah.
But woman, isn't that disrespectful?
That's
To me,
what I thought.
that's very, if somebody says, "Hey, woman,"
Yeah.
like,
Even if you look at the language, original language, it's hard to spin this as, he doesn't say, it's not mama.
Woman?
It's
Probably normal for back then.
well,
Was it?
no, it wasn't. So in other words, so John wants us, as we read it, to maybe feel a little uncomfortable. This is a kind of an abrupt saying that makes us say, "Whoa," which means why would he phrase it that way? Why would that be? What might be emphasized? What might he want to emphasize by saying, "Woman, my hour hasn't come"? Why are you doing?
To show us he was human.
Well, show us that he was human. What else?
wasn't ready yet.
That we're not. Yeah, that's right. The hour is not here, and this is going to interfere with it because I have a job to do. Woman, I got a job to do, and my job isn't dealing with wine at parties. That's not my job. My job is to what?
Die for the sinners.
Yeah, what he will say in chapter 3 to Nicodemus, to be like the snake Moses, the bronze snake Moses lifts up in the wilderness. That's what he's come to do. That's his job. Not to become a caterer at a wedding party.
Yeah.
Distracted by,
That's right. And maybe by saying that really makes it harsh, so we the readers say, okay,
That could be.
this is what he's doing. This is not his job to tinker around. But that's not where the story ends. I mean, if the story ended there, Mary, okay, well, I was put in my place. His mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you.
yeah.
Which means what? What is she doing?
Do whatever he tells you to do.
I don't have any control over him. Yeah, I know we probably don't want to project too much of ourselves into this, because I've said that on more than one occasion. Okay, do it. Just do it. Do it.
He doesn't want to do it.
But she says, do what, and what ends up happening in the story?
He makes them wine.
Okay, he tells, goes through, bring the big jars of water, changes the water in the wine. The water's the best. The wine becomes the best, better than was served early. And, we got the wedding feast and all the symbolism connected to the miracle taking place there. So you got all that going on. But Mary, even though he said, this is not my time, Mary still
Pursues it.
And trusts that he can
Do it.
do it.
Fix the situation.
And will do it. And then the last story we've got is also from John. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, here is your son," and to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that time on, his disciple took her into his home. So we've got Mary as an example of faith in that she recognized that the life of her son wasn't going to be easy right after the birth. We see her being persistent in what she asked Jesus to do, particularly in this symbolic wedding feast, which is often used in the Bible to indicate God's blessings to us. What about what's happening here at the cross? And this is a conversation only in the Gospel of John.
He's making provisions for his mother. He'll be gone, but he wants somebody to look at him.
He's making provisions for his mother, which is kind of an amazing thing to do
When you're dying.
when you're dying on a cross. I mean, and that's not the best way to go, right? You don't think about making living arrangements for your mother as you're looking down.
He had so much on his mind.
Yeah. Well,
Probably just slipped his mind until
Yeah. What was I thinking? Left the coffee pot on. Got to make living arrangements for my mother. What is John telling us? What are we getting from that? Jesus is making living arrangements for his mother. What is Jesus doing when he tells? Because he doesn't just say, "Oh, go and live with this guy, Mom."
He's not.
Move in. He's got a back room. Move in. He doesn't. He does something even more dramatic than that. What does he do?
Asks him to be her son.
Yeah, it talks about son and mother. That this is your son. This is your mother. What is Jesus doing on the cross?
Providing for his family.
Well, he's certainly providing for his. Yes, he's providing. In providing for the family, what has he done? By having John, or the beloved disciple, because he's not named, the beloved disciple being her son, and Mary being the beloved disciple's mother. What is Jesus doing? That seems pretty important for us as faithful people. What is he creating here?
He's still loving her.
He still shows love for her.
Asking
What
the
is he
disciple to
doing?
take care of her.
Certainly he's
after
taking care of his mother.
Mother.
Good son. What is he doing for us? What has he done
Showing
for
us
us?
how
Providing.
yeah.
How so?
Well, a place to stay, place to live.
Good.
Safety.
What has he created that gives us a place of safety? And I'll tell you something,
Family.
we're going to go into a worship service and we're going to see it enacted when we do the baptism. What is Jesus doing in
Family.
right here? What's that?
A family?
He's
Yeah.
creating a new family. He's creating a new family, isn't he? He doesn't just say, you all need to take care of one another. Or, Mom, you need to go with him because he's got a room for you. He doesn't do that. He says, your relationship has changed. You're not just disciple and my mother. You are mother and son now. Because what we have now is a new family that's been created. And that new family involves them, but it also can involve
Us.
us. That this is a new family that's born. Now, in the gospel, this is what this is doing in John. The Gospel of Luke, we got something very similar, only it's created when the Holy Spirit comes at Pentecost. And we get something brand new created. Here we got a family. At Pentecost, we've got a community, right? At the end of Matthew, when Jesus is on the mountain and says to the disciples who believe and doubt, go and make disciples of all nations. We get something, the ecclesia, we get the church, that which is sent out into the world. Through faith, we are being drawn together as something new. So as we look at Mary and Mary's relationship with Jesus, we get these insights into how we can live as faithful people, right? That we can be realistic in our view, but we can be persistent in our faith, and we can also claim this new family that we have. Okay, let's have a word of prayer, and then I'll go to work. Lord God, thank you so much for giving us this time together, and help us to be shaped and led by this wonderful example of Mary. Help us to see how her example and her relationship and her responses, how they can shape ours, and help us to find direction and hope in the example of this remarkable woman. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Amen. So, thank you.